No, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes, and we are going to be talking about professional wrestling for a couple of hours right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes, or on your favorite podcast application, wherever you do end up listening. That is tremendous. And, wherever you can and wherever you could, you should show a little love, either a like on YouTube if this is where you're at, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or a 5-star rating on Spotify. All little things that help grow the podcast. And that's fun as hell. I appreciate it a great deal if you do indeed do that. So again, this week, a lot of stream highlights are coming your way. Been doing a lot of that and having some fun in the meantime, and popping out some pretty good content on top of it all. So we're previewing Full Gear 2024, the big AEW offering that's happening on November 23rd. We're also going to review New Japan Pro Wrestling's historic crossover number 2 that happened over the weekend. Got some thoughts here and there as well, including some more thoughts about the WWE ID program. A nice little packed show with a lot of stuff. When I say we, I mean I went a little long on some segments, doing some things on stream, and I didn't quite get around to doing the usual contract talks that we do. So there won't be any health updates, contract stuff this time around, but do come and hang out on the YouTube channel. I will probably go over some stuff this coming Thursday. And if you can't make it to the stream, then I'll clip it, and we'll at least have that update to follow up. So listen, I think that's about it. Oh, join the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord. Link is in the description. We'd love to have you. And that's enough introduction. Let's get right to it. I wanted to talk a little more about the WWE ID thing, right? Because now there's more and more people just joining, being ID'd, right? I think that's the term that we're using. That they've been ID'd, and everyone's reporting on them, and everyone's making a real big deal out of what this is, and I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure what the advantages are, what not. But look, we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're up to 5, another 5, another 5, 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Why did I'm so terrible at this. I swear to God. When I tell you guys and gals and non-binary pals that numbers are not my thing, I am not kidding. I am absolutely not kidding. 16. There are 16 people as of recording this November 18. 16 people have been ID'd, right? Some that happened even as early as this weekend. And they are, look, Ricky Smokes, Aaron Rourke, Brad Baylor, Jackson Drake, Sean Legacy, Cappuccino Jones, Zeta Steele, Bryce Donovan, Marcus Mather, Sam Holloway, the former Jack Cartwheel, now known as Jack Summit, Zara Zacher, It's Gal, Ice Williams, Zoe Sager from up here in Canada, and Aaron Roberts. So these are the people that have been ID'd. And at this point, why did my voice do that? And at this point, I'm sort of wondering, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, they're going really hard. I shouldn't be surprised. I'm not surprised in reality. I'm not like shocked that WWE is like gobbling up talent and hoarding talent. Because this is kind of what it's slowly turning into. WWE just going hard, hoarding talent, just to make sure that they can have a hand on everyone and everything on the indies and just be just have this presence, right? I'm not surprised about this. And I think that if WWE had ID'd like 10 kids, 12, I think I'd be like, okay, that's good. But now, okay, it's 16. We're getting closer and closer to 20. I'm starting to think that, I'm starting to find that this is hoarding. At this point, I'm like, okay, they're just collecting people and putting them behind their wall without actually committing to them, which is wild to me. For a while there, WWE would, when they would hoard talent, they'd just go ahead and hire them, right? They'd bring them into NXT or whatever, they'd send them to OVW and whatever, and they'd pay them the net salaries, right? Now, they're not contracting them. They're giving them the ID, whatever that means. They're giving them whatever assistance, right? Because it was, they framed it in the press release. If I do remember, they were framing the monetary compensation as assistance, right? Something to that effect. So they're not outright paying these people, but yet they're clamping down on them. They're putting their hand on them, right? And it's kind of brilliant in a way, because you're tapping into the sensitivity of a lot of these wrestlers who grew up with watching WWE and whose dream is to be in WWE and whose dream is to main event WrestleMania, and all that stuff. And you're reaching out to them and saying, hey, we're ready to fast track you. Whatever, I don't know, whatever it is they want to do with the WWE ID program. But they're like, you're ours. They're basically marking their territory with these people without actually giving them a contract, without saying, yes, we are committed to you. We're going to give you this other level contract that seems very ambiguous to us anyway, the viewing public, the fans, because we haven't seen a contract. We don't know what the terms are. So as long as we don't know what the terms look like, we can't really sit here and go, oh, yes, this is unquestionably it. It's a little strange that this is something that people are outright committing to. Joe Lanz on the flagship podcast this past weekend made an extremely salient point where he's like, these people that are accepting these IDs, whereas on one hand you can say, well, good on you for betting on yourself and, creating the space for you to go into your dream, to actually achieve your dream. They're also removing any type of leverage that they might have later down the road when they're a fully fleshed out pro wrestler or whatever, and they can't play both sides off of each other anymore, right? So they're actually removing a lot of their leverage, because his argument essentially was saying, AEW, the way AEW should position themselves is just like outright, flat out refuse to hire anyone who's been ID'd. That should be the thing, right? Because why would you do that? Why would you bring in someone who's been ID'd, who's been doing something else, or worse yet, negotiate with them so that they can use leverage with WWE to improve their salary, just basically using you to boost up their contract with WWE, right? And that's of course is speculatory, but the idea that they won't have any leverage down the line is very real. Like if WWE already has their hands in them and they want to bring them on, well, they'll be able to negotiate their contract outside of what a usual typical free market should, because they're already part of the system. It's like, well, you're coming in, and this is probably all set up in these contracts where it's like, if you come in as a WWE ID, you will start on this floor and your increments will be this, and that for whatever years, and your merch sales and whatnot. Like, this was probably already all planned, and it's probably substantially lower than someone else coming in like an indie star coming into NXT, one would assume, or anyone else who has the potential, the power to put AEW and WWE at odds, negotiating to bring them in. Because after all, this is TKO now. This is the same company that owns UFC and that is notorious for being really shitty when it comes to paying their talent. And TKO is still looking for ways to consolidate what's in WWE and UFC to make sure there's no redundancies. They're still very much in cost-cutting mode. They got rid of a bunch of people recently. You get rid of a guy like Baron Corbin, okay? You get rid of a guy like Baron Corbin, mid-card guy who's probably costing you millions, who's not drawing a dime, who's not, pushing any ratings or making any big merch sales, but he's costing you millions upon millions because he's been there for years. What's the play? Like, I'm just talking from a pure numbers point of view. I'm not even talking about talent or contribution or, is he a great guy? I'm just talking like from a bean counter perspective. You have someone on your payroll who's, it costs you out the ass to keep this guy in the company, right? Now you fire him, liberates his contract money. Then you got all this money left to pay whatever it is they're paying a bunch of WWE ID kids that they can bring in and lock into lower tier contracts in which they won't have the negotiating power to try and get more out of WWE. And I think it's smart for WWE, but it's bad for the talent. I don't think that's great, And when you start positioning it that way, you sort of wonder, is this a good deal? Again, like, all we're doing is speculating right now, but you have to wonder what makes this deal really enticing outside of maybe possibly I'll be heading to WWE one day. To WWE proper, as opposed to just being an ID person. What's the good deal for me kind of thing? Is there really something substantial here? Is there something in the contract that says within 3 years you're going to be in NXT guaranteed or whatever the fuck? Like, I don't know. Or are we just being preyed upon because of our dreams of being a pro in the biggest professional wrestling promotion in the world? Right. So the more it goes on, I'm still surprised that there's so many people who've been ID'd. I'm pretty sure they're not done. There's going to be more and more of these. And, what's unfortunate is that there's a lot of people who are losing business leverage for later down the road. And workers' rights, said a wise man one day. Hey, Matt, how you doing? Smacking it raw, baby. Hey, I bet you like to flick them beans, you. I was going to call you a weirdo, but actually, it's not that weird. It's very cool. Nice to see you, buddy. Most of the people they have ID'd never come close to turning their passion of pro wrestling into a viable job. A lot of fans don't realize how little money indie wrestlers make from wrestling. I can't blame anyone who agrees to one of these deals because for most of the people they've signed, this is the closest, they have ever been able to turn this dream into a job. I agree. The point is that at what cost, and I'm touching wood And I'm touching wood, and I'm legitimately, I don't want anyone to misconstrue me. I'm legitimately hoping that this works out for these people. I really do. And more than just like one person. I legitimately want this to work out for them because they should be able to make a career out of it, right? They should. And on that front, I hope their money's good now. I hope it really does translate into something long term in which they will be able to make a hefty living out of what they're doing. Because I agree. Look, I don't think people realize how little money you make on the indies and how much expenses rack up, especially, keeping your body in shape. It's not, there's no Doc Samson, on the indie scene that just hangs out to make sure that, that gives you a checkup after each match and makes sure you're okay. And, does some sports medicine with you. There's none of that. So that's out of pocket. It's expenses. I just kind of hope it's worth it. And, if they're, look, I don't know. If this brings them closer to what they've always wanted, I agree you can't blame them. But I just hope that it's not at the expense of that they didn't do something very immediate that will be at the expense of their future. Because here's the other thing. Is that I don't trust WWE because we've seen this situation before. We've seen it in the past. We've seen it multiple times where they will come out and seem like this tremendous benefactor for a scene, for the indies, and then suddenly start pulling the rug from under everyone because that's just what they do, right? The Cruiserweight Classic was just another way to try to empty out the independent circuit, right? NXT UK destroyed the UK scene. And you want to go back to the territories? Let's go. All these buyouts. All of this was supposed to be great for WWE, don't get me wrong. But the scene then suffers. It's like we've been saying recently, right? Whenever WWE is doing well, a healthy WWE is usually bad for pro wrestling. As long as there is a contract matching clause on the ID deals, i.e. AEW gives you a deal, we can match it, and you have to sign with us. I don't see how these wrestlers could lose out on money. That is, and if there is a matching clause. I mean, we don't know, right? But it's like, I agree with the sentiment that if I'm WWE, I'm not negotiating with these people because I am not, as AEW, I am not giving someone who is already in the WWE system, I am not giving them the opportunity to use me as leverage, strictly as leverage, so that you can go back to your essentially your employer and say, I want more money. Because AEW is like, well, we don't have a chance to sign these people, so who cares? We're not going to give you the opportunity to do that, right? And above it all, I think this essentially does mean I think it's going to be the end of the way things. I don't want to say the end of the Performance Center, but it's going to be the end of how things operate at the Performance Center as we know it today. Because I think, from what I'm able to understand now with how things are going, right? Because I think we all had the understanding that from the press release that WWE was going to ID people from schools, right? So the idea was you go to a school and you work at that school, you train, and then someone from the school calls up, Sapolsky, whatever, Regal. I don't even know if Regal really does this, but Sapolsky for sure, and says, I got a kid here. She's tremendous. Put him on the list kind of thing. I thought that's what it was going to be. But it turns out from what I'm gathering is they're because right now they're like recruiting from promotions across the country. Like it doesn't matter. Like they're just pulling you from anywhere. So they pull you from anywhere. And then you will probably have to report to these schools, meaning that wrestler, you will probably have to report to these schools to continue your training. Because otherwise, like, what is the benefit of including these schools in here? I don't understand it, right? I just, there's one person I think was recruited from a school. I don't remember which one, but it seems to me like there's one person who was recruited from a school, right? And Reality of Wrestling, that'd be two, but there's another one too. The way I'm seeing it is, I think what WWE wants to do is offset the costs of training people by sending the ID people to train at the schools instead of the performance center. So again, you're not on the same tier contract as an NXT recruit, because the NXT recruits, part of their contract is the fact that they can train at the PC whenever they want. So you as an ID don't go to the performance center. You go to one of the ID'd schools. You train there, and you continue to train there until you get the call for NXT. Then you get called into the system where you continue / complete your training, your development there at the PC or at the Apex, which still seems to be a path that we're on, ever since that was rumored that the PC was going to be merged into the Apex. What was it, like in August? That's something that, WWE shut that down, right? But it's still something that, again, if I'm one of the bean counters at TKO and I'm looking at the setup, I'm like, why are we paying for 2 training facilities? Let's just keep one, jettison the other, right? You get rid of the one that we haven't been renovating, like putting $20 million into renovating in Las Vegas, which is where essentially our base of operations is, right? So you do the Apex, so you merge PC activities into the Apex, which is the new place that they'll keep whatever classes they have now, and will continue to use the NIL to attract NIL kids. Because I don't think, even though I think the NIL program stinks, I don't think they're going to stop it just yet, because there's a level of prestige to it. So they're going to keep attracting talent via NIL, show off this $1 million facility, the Apex, right? Because you're not going to tell, we've talked about this, you're not going to tell, a college athlete, who's been training in these incredible facilities, to go train in some warehouse down in fucking Idaho or whatever, right? They'll be like, no, fuck you. I'm not doing this. That's not what I trained for. So you're going to show them, the big spot in Vegas, right? So they're going to use that to attract the NIL kids. The Apex will also be used by current NXT talent to train. But I think we're going to be done with this being, a bare bones from scratch thing where we bring outside of the NIL program. We're going to stop bringing in people that we're going to train from the very, very bottom to the top, right? Because I think what happened is that someone in WWE remembered that the best way to grow and foster talent in pro wrestling is to actually have wrestlers wrestle like on the indies in front of, in different towns, in different venues, wrestling different people, various styles, different audiences. instead of working out and training in a warehouse all the time. And I think they're seeing this because I'm convinced they are not happy with the results right now from the NIL, from a lot of the people who are in there right now that were brought in without any experience. They're, a lot of, whereas you bring in people who have worked elsewhere, who are seasoned wrestlers, these people are much easier to train. Now you're trying to get, God bless her heart, Kelani Jordan to do stuff, do some crazy stuff, but it looks like routine more than a wrestling match. And that's something, there's going to be a point where it's something she's either going to get, because you can only teach it so far. She's either going to get it or it's not going to work out, right? So that's the thing. So then since WWE is sharing costs, if we want to go back to a previous point, if we're doing the Apex to train only the people who are on TV and our NIL kids, the people who are in the IDs who will eventually, hopefully, make it to WWE, right? To NXT, they'll be off slumming it elsewhere, and WWE is not absorbing these costs. Like whatever allowance they're giving these kids, the IDs, you would assume that someone in accounting in WWE crunched all the numbers and were like, it would be better for us to give, let's say, I'm just spitballing a number, $10,000 a year to these 16 indie kids, as opposed to bringing these 16 people into the PC and training them there and not sure about the results. It's got to be cheaper for them to do that, and I think this is what I think this is a way for WWE to slash some costs and eventually set up the next generation of talent to not have generous contracts like they used to do. Not like being multimillionaire by being a lower mid-carder, for instance. I think I think it's all part of a larger plan that looks like it's very beneficial, but it looks very benevolent that we're looking out for the little guy. I think there's other forces at work. I think there's other considerations that WWE is considering. Great use of vocabulary there, Warren. As opposed to just, yes, we need to foster talent. They do need to foster talent, but I think they want to offset the costs. I think they want to make sure that whatever training they do is minimal, because I think they figured out that bringing talent in from other sports who were maybe not even pro wrestling fans when they were kids, who that weren't their dream, that pro wrestling wasn't their dream, bringing them in and raising them from scratch might take a little longer than they thought. And I think we're going to see a lot more churn in that regard. People who are just not progressing. Like not everyone's going to be an Obafemi, guys. Like not everyone is going to be an Obafemi. And we know that because there's a lot of non-Obafemis in NXT right now. There's a lot of them. And I think at some point they're going to just want to cut the cord on a lot of them as well. Some articles and stuff. And I pull up this thing on Slam Wrestling that talks about that let me pull it up here. Talks about Sandy Parker. And I'm like, who? Sandy Parker, who was a black woman who wrestled years ago, actually was the first black woman to ever hold a world championship in pro wrestling. I'm like, who? Like I'm legitimately sitting there going, I don't know who we're talking about. And what makes it so I'm reading the article and it turns out that the author, Greg Oliver from Slam Wrestling, was writing it because he found out like a couple of days ago that Sandy Parker had died 2 years ago. And that's absolutely bonkers. I'm like, okay, so she's potentially a historically significant person in pro wrestling, specifically for women's wrestling. And look, I've never heard of her. I'm not going to pretend, I'm not going to be one of these people who's like, oh yes, Sandy Parker. Yes. Oh, no, I've never heard of her. And it comes out like this. And then Dave Meltzer today posts an obituary that's going to be in the Observer tomorrow, but he gave subscribers some free access. So I'm thinking, why don't we all do a little research together? Why don't we all sit around and find out about Sandy Parker? And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that because I never heard of her, you obviously have never heard of her either. You couldn't possibly have heard about her if I've never heard about her. That's not what I'm saying, but maybe you have, and all the more power to you. And I would have loved to be in your shoes before this, but I was thinking, if anything, we could read the obituary together, and maybe we'll glean some new information, or just discover someone completely new, and where she fits in history here, because the fact that she passed away 2 years ago and no one picked up on it, like nothing, is incredibly sad. If she is indeed like this hallmark figure that Dave seems to corroborate in his obituary. So this is a subscriber exclusive. Shout out to everyone at Figure 4. I'm sure you don't mind me in this circumstance doing this. It's not a regular practice, but I think there's something very interesting to pull up here. And look, if you don't have a subscription to the Observer, I think you should for times like this. This is tremendous. And if you don't, well, you probably never will. So, what's the use, right? But I still think everyone at some point, as a wrestling fan who's interested in, particularly in the past, should have, or at least have had, an Observer subscription at some point. Anyway, so let's get to it. Let's read this Dave Meltzer's obituary about Sandy Parker. Sandy Parker, the first black woman to hold a major world championship, passed away in June 2022. But nobody within the wrestling world knew about it until it was reported this past week by Greg Oliver on Slam Wrestling. While almost all sources listed her birthday as March 2nd, 1952, Oliver reported her being 77 at her time of death, at the time of her death, and her actual birthday being November 1st, 1944. She started wrestling in 1968 and worked regularly through 1977, with the last several years seeing her as one of the few women who got semi-regular bookings while not being part of the Fabulous Moolah stable, particularly as a star in Japan. Parker, who was 5'2", was one of the top in-ring women wrestlers of her era, an underdog babyface who mostly made fiery comebacks. Oliver credited Chris Bergstrom with finding out that Parker, real name Cassandra Jolene Parker, had died more than 2 years ago while living in Las Vegas. Susan Green, who briefly held the NWA Women's World Tag Team titles with Parker and considered her a friend, had tried to contact her recently after her Christmas card she sent was returned, and when she tried to call her, the phone number was disconnected. Holy shit, this is so incredibly sad. Green said that in 2022, Parker had a caretaker living with her who wouldn't let her talk to anyone. Odd. Green said she mentioned Windsor, a city that Parker lived in, heard it, and insisted on talking, and they talked for 15 minutes. Parker said she was going to the hospital for tests, but she was very excited about their careers. Talking about their careers. They agreed to talk a week later, but Green couldn't get in touch with her and tried to call her every day with no answer. 3 weeks later, she called and the phone was disconnected. Oliver said that they know she went to University Medical Center in Las Vegas on June 21st, 2022, I guess he means here, and died before the end of the month. Oh, fucking sad, man. Parker's name popped up in the news in 2021. WWE decided to honor Ethel Johnson for their Legacy Hall of Fame with the idea she was the first black woman wrestler. It was a mess. Oh yeah, I remember this. It was a mess because there were those on the internet who said that, and whoever made the decision or was told to find out who the first was found Johnson's name and no more research was done. However, Babs Wingo, the sister of Johnson, preceded her as a wrestler by a few months, so the premise wasn't accurate. And for whatever reason, likely an honest mistake, or perhaps figuring nobody would know, the footage used for Ethel Johnson was actually 1970s footage of Parker, which I eventually reported at the time. Yeah, I remember that. That was fucking embarrassing. That was an embarrassment by WWE. The families came out and everything. You remember that stint? Yeah, that was a fucking mess. On May 13, 1973, Parker beat Miyoko Hoshino in Choshi, Japan, to win the WWWA World Championship, the famed red belt of All Japan Women's Wrestling, which would be the same belt later held by legends like Jackie Saito, Jaguar Yokota, Chigusa Nagayo, Bull Nakano, Lioness Asuka, Manami Toyota, and more. Mildred Burke, who had been the top star on the first women's wrestling tour in Japan in 1954 as world champion, was affiliated with the promotion and booked women like Parker, Jean Antone, Marie Vagnon, Betty Nicoli, Sharon Lee, Jane O'Brien, Sylvia Hackney, Princess Warstar, Jackie West, and Lita Merez, the mother of future roller derby skater Dave Merez, for Japan in the early days of the promotion. Many pops to the roller derby connection here by Dave. That's actually tremendous. The WWWA name actually came from Burke, as after her split from Billy Wolf, she formed her own promotion, the WWWA, and made herself world champion, a belt she held until her 1956 retirement. Because of her 1954 tour, Burke was thought of in Japan as the female version of Lou Thez, the first authentic world champion who came to the country and had a credibility in that country that the other world champion, Fabulous Moolah, never had. Moolah did come to All Japan Women in 1968. I didn't know this. And even lost her title for a few weeks there. But they used Burke's title as their main title from 1970 until the close of the promotion. She lost the title back to Hoshino on June 10, 1973 in Ibaraki, Japan. No black women held a women's world title again until Aja Kong beat Bull Nakano for that same title in 1992. Aja Kong is black? Did I just learn something? Or are we? Erika Shishito is a Japanese professional wrestler. She currently makes appearances, blah, blah, blah. She's the founder of, her mother is Japanese and her father, the late Henry Manigo, is an African-American. Okay. Who worked for the U.S. Army at Tachawaka Airfield. Huh. I did learn something today. Parker was born in Vancouver and attended matches regularly, often a few times per week as a teenager in the early 60s. She would also go to Seattle for matches. She knew the male wrestlers in the area and some talked with her about breaking her in, but at the time she passed. A few years later, when she was living in Windsor, Ontario, she decided she wanted to be a pro wrestler and found Luke Klein's wrestling school in Detroit. She was mostly trained by women wrestlers, Lucille Dupree, Linda Klein, and Mary Jane Mull, And 4 months later, she started working on some shows for The Sheik in 1968. She started traveling the next year and moved to South Carolina to train at Moolah's stable, given that she seemed to be the only way to be a full-time touring pro wrestler in that area. Well, yeah. Yeah, it was. While she and Tony Rose were probably the best-known women wrestlers in the stable, she had many issues with Moolah, who was 50 but kept herself as world champion in those days. Moolah wanted all her women to come off as ladylike to the public and uphold an image, while Parker, who was gay, what? Would hang out at gay bars. Well, this is like, how is this woman's legacy been flying under the radar for all these years? What a twist! And Dave just like drops it there. It's like, yeah, because she was gay. You know, she hung out in gay bars and Moolah didn't like that. Wow. While Parker was not the only gay woman wrestler, the others all hit it, and Parker did as well, sometimes dating male wrestlers, and was even married at one point, which was a fairly common thing, right? At the time. And I'm not saying that it was right, but it was like fairly common, and not just in pro wrestling. Like, this was an actual thing. Parker toured North America as part of the Moolah stable from 1969 to 1972. She said Moolah read the riot act to her about going to gay bars and wanted Parker to date her nephew. Susan Green, who was also gay and part of Moolah's troupe, said she knew to hide it from Moolah. Parker claimed that Moolah was a hypocrite, claiming she had dalliances with some of the women she trained. Oh, I don't remember this little bit of Moolah lore. She claimed that at times Moolah tried to get her to sleep with promoters for better payoffs. Well, yes, yeah. Yes. While on a tour of Hawaii while still working for Moolah, Green and Parker beat Rose and Donna Cristianello in 2 out of 3 falls on November 24, 1971 at the HIC Arena in Honolulu to win the NWA World Women's Tag Team Championships. It really didn't mean much as those belts were rarely talked about. Oh, how the more things change, right? 3 days later at the Honolulu Civic Auditorium, Rose and Cristianello won the belts back. After leaving the Moolah stable, Parker wound up based in Los Angeles and affiliated with Burke. She mostly worked on the West Coast or in the Southwest, as well as Hawaii, and became a star in Japan. This has been fascinating so far. I don't know about you. This is an education here. Besides her holding the WWWA title once, she held the tag titles 8 times, although it was all over a 2-year period. Masked Lee and Parker beat Mariko Akagi and Yoshiko Miyamoto, who later became Jumbo Miyamoto, for the titles on June 11, 1973 in Sasebo, and lost them back on June 25th in Ofunado. They did another switch with the 2 teams, with Lee and Parker winning on July 17, 1973 in Yokohama. They lost them back on July 24, 1973 in Nagoya. Parker and Antone beat Junko Sasaki and Peggy Kuruda on May 16, 1974 in Shizuoka. They lost them back on May 21, 1974 in Kochi. Parker and Betty Nicoli beat Sasaki and Kuroda on June 3, 1974 in Gifu before they vacated the titles after winning them. Parker and Nicoli beat Sasaki and Akagi on June 14, 1974 in Nagoya. They lost to Miyamoto and Sasaki on June 28, 1974 in Morioka. They won them back on June 29, 1974 in Ishihara. They lost them back on July 9, 1974 in Osaka. Then they won them back on July 21st in 1974 in Takikawa. They lost them to Akagi and Miyuki Yanagi on July 26, 1974 in Muronen. Parker and Antone won them on July 30, 1974 in Mizusawa. Miyamoto and Akagi won them on August 5th, 1974 in Tokyo. Not the most compelling bit, but nonetheless, you get a good idea how, the titles were essentially hot potatoed. While she mostly worked for All Japan Women, she did do a 1974 tour where she was Moolah's tag team partners for the IWE in Japan, which probably indicated how strong her reputation was in Japan to see a major men's group insist on being part of matches where Moolah brought herself in as the top star along with Paula Kay. She noted when she was in Moolah's stable, Kay told her outright that, quote, "I don't like black people." But Parker shot back at her, and eventually through the travels on the road, they became friends, and Parker later said, "You're right, Sandy. You have to talk to the person. You have to hate or like the person, not the color." Aw. Either that or Paula Kay is a hell of a worker. She noted that when they were on tour in Alabama at a restaurant and were eating together, that the restaurant served the other women, including Kay, but not her. She said Kay saw this, grabbed the guy behind the counter, and said, "If Parker didn't get the food in 2 minutes, your ass will be dead." That's tremendous. Okay. That's pretty cool. But she worked only a few dates in California, occasionally billed as the California State Women's Champion, and occasionally went to the Central States and St. Louis to work with Antone and Nicole. So most of her career was in Japan until finishing up in 1977 on a tour that included her losing to Akagi for the WWWA title on March 23 in Matsudo. She worked a variety of jobs and would regularly attend the Cauliflower Alley Club events in Southern California and later Las Vegas as her link to the business. She was contacted to be part of a documentary called Out in the Ring about gay wrestlers, but decided against doing it. Wow. Okay. Good read. And I legitimately had never heard of her. And I think it's kind of crazy that even among historians or whatnot, like it's not a name that comes up often. But then again, okay, I understand, like if she called it quits in 1977, right? That's what Dave says. Until finishing up in 1977. Most of her career was in Japan until finishing up in 1977. So I think what Dave is saying here is that she wrapped up her wrestling career in 77. So if she hadn't done anything at all from 1977 on to 2022 when she passed away, I can understand why a lot of fans, like, first of all, how a lot of fans just never heard of her, right? Because you don't keep yourself active, you don't stay in the conversation. Well, eventually people just like move away. Look, I think this is tremendous, and this is why I anyway, rest in peace to her. The fact that we haven't heard about this until 2 years past her death is just, that's a story in and about itself. She had a caretaker that allegedly didn't let her talk to anyone. Like that's insane in and about itself. Like there's a story there. There's an investigation. There's a tale to be spun here. It's not as if she had become a recluse because she'd still go to the Cauliflower Alley Club. Like that. It's just remarkable. Like she's a gay black woman and she's going to wrestle in Japan. Like that's where she settled in. And she, for Mildred Burke's spin-off promotion when she broke away from Wolf, like there's such a story there. What am I missing? See, this is why this story right here is exactly why it's proof. Actually, it's consecrated proof right here as to why we can't let the history of wrestling be dictated by corporations, by WWE and even AEW to a degree, right? They're doing good now, but you never know. These are companies, right? We've talked about this multiple times. on this show, and for years, even going back to when I was doing shit on Fightful, okay? The problem with WWE basically owning all of the videotape of all the wrestling that existed in North America, or at least like what, 85% of pro wrestling that happened in the territories back in the 70s, the 80s, the problem, and WCW and ECW, the problem is that this archive of truly historical stuff remains in their possession, and they can do whatever the hell they want with it. Now, what do they want to do? They want to drip feed it on their WWE Vault thing, which has tremendous stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's drip fed, as opposed to when we had the network, when we could just flip it open and watch whatever we wanted. This is why I think it's disgusting when people create these obscene, the obscene is going a little far, but these incredibly twisted narratives around Dave Meltzer and try to discredit him, so that when it's time to focus on history from a man who has covered it all, who has seen it all since for 40 years, this man is the cornerstone of everything that has happened in pro wrestling. He can remember stuff. He's talked to the main people. He's always been in contact. He's always been at the center of it. And somehow, because of how certain guys with podcasts don't like him, and because of how certain fans don't like when he doesn't give 5 stars to the most mundane matches, he's suddenly all sorts. He's unreliable. He's biased. He's terrible. He's a misogynist. He's all these things. This is exactly it. This is exactly the example right here as to why the history of pro wrestling cannot be dictated by these promotions, by these corporations whose objective is not to promote pro wrestling's history. It's to make money. So they will pull out whatever they need from pro wrestling history when it's time to make money. But in the meantime, all these things fall to the wayside. So when something like this comes up, I'm like, this is tremendous. This is why we have to do our best to protect it. I don't have a solution. I don't know how to do it. Dave's not going to be around forever. Anyway, Sandy Parker, man. Sandy Parker. Earlier today, I get a little tip-off. And I'm told, hey, Mike Bailey's no longer on the TNA roster page. I'm like, what? I go to check out myself, right? That's what you should always do. That's what you should always do. You go check that out, right? And go, okay, their alphabetical order first name, right? Mike Santana, that's not the same guy. Matthew Raywalt, not the same guy. That is correct. Like, where is Mike Bailey? Oh, they probably just put it under Speedball, right? The RQST system, Rascals system. Oh, well, it's the, right? Because they can't, right? They can't sort it properly. So, okay, all right. So we're, all right. So Santino Marella, Steve, where is Mike Bailey? There's no Speedball. And indeed, then it's revealed by Fightful Select, say that Speedball Mike Bailey's contract has been up since November 1st. I think a lot of us saw this coming when he dropped the X Division title to the Moose. And also sort of, well, he's kind of been dropping some subtle hints that his time was coming up and so on and so forth. And it makes sense in the TNA context as well. They are still in this restructuring mode. They're getting rid of people to sort of free up some money. You know, they fired some people. I'm not saying that Speedball was fired, especially not after a report that says that his contract came up on the 1st. I don't know if he was not renewed because TNA decided to, or if it was a mutual understanding. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But Speedball Mike Bailey is officially back on officially, unofficially, back on the market, right? And then Sean Ross Sapp posts this on Blue Sky. I got to tell you, folks, I'm not going to lie, feels kind of good to be posting some things that are happening on the Blue Sky as opposed to anywhere else. Speedball Mike Bailey appears to be headed to AEW, according to those Fightful Select spoke with. Now, I don't have the full details on this. I don't know what more details you need, quite frankly. I'm not sure I'm into that. I'm not sure I'm into it. And don't get me wrong, okay? I got to start clearing the air a little bit here. Because I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh, how can you not like Mike Bailey? No, I love Speedball Mike Bailey. I think he is tremendous. He is a proud representative of the country of Canada, of the province of Quebec, a genuinely nice guy. This is one of these guys that I never hear anything bad about him. Like I never, ever hear anyone say something shitty about Mike Bailey or something shitty that Mike Bailey did. He's one of these guys that comes across as just being universally beloved. Okay, that's all there is to it. However, I am not convinced that 2024 AEW is the best landing spot for him. You will notice I said 2024 AEW right now. I don't think he's a guy that will find his footing in AEW. And this is not a barefoot joke. I don't think he's going to find his footing in AEW. AEW is in a weird, not in a weird spot, but it is in itself in a reconstructive moment, right? And they're trying to refine their focus by refocusing on elements that used to make the company work. We got Jon Moxley back on top. We've got perennial favorite Orange Cassidy challenging for the world championship. We just brought in the Hurt Business, who looked tremendous. I'm eating crow. I think it's been great so far. And, elevating new guys like Swerve. Kenny Omega's on the cusp of returning, and that's going to be a big deal. I don't know if little awkward energy Mike Bailey is going to be able to get himself over. If you had told me Mike Bailey is joining the AEW roster in, early 2020, like just before the pandemic crushed us all, right? Or even, particularly in that time, or even just after that, right? Like post Bryan Danielson's arrival. If you were to tell me Mike Bailey's coming on the roster, I'm slapping my hands together and I'm like, let's fucking go, bro. Like, this was the era where truly AEW was where the best wrestle, and you get banger matches week after week after week after week. And Mike Bailey would have fit in like a glove. He would have just, he'd be, third from the bottom, right? And he'd be tearing the house down, he'd be wrestling Dante Martin, and people would be, tearing their shirts off with how great it was, right? And then we'd all be excited about the prospect of Bailey versus Ospreay, with Ospreay coming in because he had spent the last 2 years just having banger matches on TV. But AEW is no longer exclusively focused on pro wrestling, or as it perhaps was once. Now there's, You got to work in you got to work in the personality. You got to get your promos down. You got to get this shit down now, right? And Mike Bailey, god damn, as much as I like Mike Bailey, as much as I like the dude, and I love his matches, the energy he exudes is not, like Chat said, is not US TV. He's not a US TV wrestler, right? Nerds like us, we see Mike Bailey and we're like, all right, boys, here we go. We're in for a good one because it's Mike Bailey, right? So you're just like, yeah, this is gonna rule. Let's go. What was the one he had just recently that was really, really good that I saw? Why is it completely escapes me? But I saw one recently. Oh, with Takeshita. Holy fuck. Yeah, that was great. Like at the Maple Leaf Pro thing. Yeah, that was absolutely phenomenal. And I see these things, but these are great matches. I don't see, the thing is that I don't see how Mike Bailey is going to get himself over in AEW. Now, am I going to be happy for this guy? This guy who has an incredible work ethic, who was making the best out of a bad situation when he was stuck in Japan during the pandemic and doing the best he could and establishing himself. Like, he was, before the pandemic hit, Speedball Mike Bailey was on an upward buzz on the American Indies, and people were taking notice and like, holy shit, this rules. This guy rules. And then the pandemic hits and all his momentum nosedives. And then he comes back and has to rebuild that buzz. And Jesus Christ, did he ever did, right? With that WrestleMania weekend 2 years ago, where he was, the unequivocal MVP. Like, he was wrestling 3 times a night and delivering 4-star matches every time, right? Every ounce that he can squeeze out of Tony Khan, Comrade Tony Khan, in this circumstance here, is deserved. Like, this is a guy who has sacrificed and is given again. And he loves, it's a guy you can't take, he loves pro wrestling. And you can't take that away from him. And especially in a moment right now, especially when it comes to Japanese fans, where a lot of Japanese fans wonder if certain wrestlers really do love pro wrestling or not, right? Is this a guy, not even this is a guy who loves pro wrestling. Loves it as much as I do, as you probably do. He watches the tape. He nerds out on matches. Like, he's one of us. So there's all sorts of good, strong qualities regarding Mike Bailey. But you know what? His energy and his charisma are not one of them. They're just not. And I don't, like, the prospect of a Mike Bailey Ricochet match is exciting, but not enough to say, yeah, lock him into AEW. The prospect of another match with Takeshita, absolutely, but not enough to lock into AEW. With Will Ospreay, yeah, sure, yes, let's do that again. I guess Danielson would be the fresh match, and that would be tremendous. But I don't know. I don't know if he's a guy that's meant for North American TV wrestling, or they're going to have to work on his package. Please don't clip that. They're going to have to work on his packaging to make sure that he comes across as something that he comes across as something bigger, right? Much bigger. Because when the news broke today that his contract was out, and I was sitting back in my chair and I was thinking, I was like, okay, so he should be going back to Japan. Immediately that was my thought. Go back to Japan and have yourself a proper New Japan run. Like, join the roster, join the junior division for a couple of years. Have yourself a proper run. Win yourself a Best of Super Juniors. Win yourself the junior heavyweight title, right? Do that. Go to Arena Mexico. Go do CMLL is hot. CMLL is hot these days. Go there, work with the guys there, Have yourself some great matches with Volador Jr. Go fight the Villano kids. Go fight Atlantis Jr. Have yourself some barn burners with Mascara Dorada. You know, have Averno be your base. You know, that kind of stuff. But chat makes a very good point. There's no money to be made in Japan. I'm talking selfishly as a fan, right? Of course. Like that's where I think Speedball excels. Now, the money is unquestionably better in AEW, and you know, he can still live in Montreal. He's already got his visa paperwork all set up. Like, you know, the guy's good to go, right? I could be wrong. I've been wrong when it comes to AEW doing hirings, right? I said, you know, hiring Adam Copeland is going to be a disaster. Why are we doing this? It sucks. And Edge ended up assimilating himself into the locker room and adopting the AEW style perfectly. It's like, and he's had a really good run up until his injury, right? The cage match with Gangrel, what was it? It was against Malachi Black, right? That was the only true misstep. And it's forgivable. The Hurt Business, the Hurt Syndicate. I was like, Bobby Lashley, man, I don't know. It's kind of annoying. I'm not sure. Guy never drew a dime. What are we doing here? And they bring them in, all three of them, and it's like it's been tremendous. Like, it's been objectively tremendous. So maybe they got the magic touch here, and Speedball is going to find the identity that's going to make him rise to the top. But look, this guy he's not world championship material, and that's fine. And maybe you just want a good, solid mid-card worker too. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You need guys who's like, your ceiling is clear, brother. You know, your ceiling is clear. As long as he stays with that, like I said, like that awkward energy, Speedball is never going to be a top guy. He's never like a top guy. Never. But, you know, maybe something will unlock. Maybe he'll just get like the ka-ching. I mean, he's a good match guy. That's the point, right? He can be a good match guy, good mid-carder, and that's not an issue, right? Hell, I'm even thinking right now, AR Fox versus Bailey, right? Nice little mid-card entertainment match, and you got yourself something fun to watch on a Saturday night, right? If you put that on Collision. Like, that's a perfect Collision match, right? Or a Shockwave match. I don't know what, you know, depends on what they're doing once they dump Rampage, but you know, like there's no shortage of good opponents for Mike Bailey, right? But there's no shortage of good wrestlers for Mike Bailey. I'm just afraid Mike Bailey is not going to get himself over like people think he's going to get himself over. Then again, I could be wrong. It's if his work can look, it'll depend on the direction of the promotion. Because if, like I said, if this was 2022, if this was 2022 AEW, where everyone is wrestling like it's the last night on earth, and we're having extremely explosive dynamites week after week after week, pun intended, then yeah, there's a spot for him there. In this AEW, I don't know. Mike Bailey's contract situation is turning into a saga, isn't it? You remember, we've been talking about it like on stream since last week, if I'm not mistaken. Like, this news broke last Thursday, if memory serves me right. And where it was like, yeah, no, his contract is up on November 1st. And he's hitting the bricks. He's gone, and he's going to be a free agent. Then Mike Johnson, I believe, was yesterday, or it was Sunday, or over the weekend, or yesterday. I don't quite remember specifically. Was basically saying, yeah, Mike Bailey's contract is up. He's wrapped everything up, and sources say he's heading to AEW. Well, I think even Fightful brought that up, but Mike Johnson said, oh, he'll be debuting in the Continental Classic. Like, that's the plan. That's what he's been hearing, right? Starting off Mike Bailey in the Continental Classic. And if you were here on the stream yesterday, you were no doubt, in amazement at me, because you're like, wow, Warren, you said that's exactly how you would debut Mike Bailey. That's exactly how you do things. I was patting myself on the back. I was taking a bit of a victory lap where I was like, well, this is how you do it, man. This is how you go ahead and do it. But anyway, so I'm sure you were all like mouths agape, sitting there going, wow, Warren Hayes, man, such a prognosticator. He's a prognosticator. It's a nice word. It's a nice term. But turns out we might have a little bumpy bump in the road where Fightful Select today is reporting. I've got the post from Blue Sky here from Sean Ross Sapp saying his TNA deal runs through the end of 2024. However, he finished up with the company and said his goodbyes in Detroit. He was able to talk to other companies and is expected to head to AEW in January. As of now, he wouldn't be able to do the C2. What? What the fuck, man? What are we doing? There's this, it's, I mean, this is turning into a saga. So at this point, I'm just letting myself drift on this one. The story has changed multiple times. It could be just people covering right now. That's the thing. Like, there could be people in AEW just reaching out and saying, hey, he can't start before January, so he's not going to be in the C2. And the next thing you know, he's in the C2. Like, that could be something. Although, I don't think anyone in AEW would reach out to Sean and would, you say a blatant lie, because then Sean loses faith in that source. And another time that the source has to communicate something that is very, very important, or has to get a point across, well, Sean will be a little more, weary about giving that person his trust. So, so look, at this point, we're just going to let ourselves be surprised. But I had to bring this up tonight so that we could have a full circle moment with the Speedball Mike Bailey stuff. But look, one thing that everyone is agreeing on, he's heading to AEW. So that's at least something. Yeah. Couldn't he have got a shorter extension? Couldn't they have shortened his contract too? They did it for Jordan Grace. Why couldn't they have done it to old Speedball here? Fightful did say his contract was up, but I think they only said he could debut in the CC. Well, here in the C2. But here they're saying, I don't understand. But here they're saying that he's not going to be in it. Like, Sean is outright saying, as of now, he wouldn't be able to do the C2 because he's starting in January. Hey, don't get me wrong. I still think him debuting in the Continental Classic is the best opportunity AEW has to get him over. It is absolutely. They said that originally, and Sean cleared that point up. Okay. All right. Thank you, chat. Y'all are on top of this stuff. You're feeding me the breaking news, making sure that I stay honest. That's important. All right, it's review time. We are going to review New Japan and Stardom Historic Crossover 2, which happened this weekend on November 17, 2024 from Osaka, Japan in the Edion Arena. 3,547 people were in attendance for the big crossover show. The second of its kind. How did it fare, Warren? Is this a good number? I'm glad you asked. It's funny because recently we were talking about when we reviewed Power Struggle, which was a tremendous show. 3,773 people were there, and I was kind of like, good, but not great. Just so we can recall, so for Power Struggle, we were at 3,700 some. For the night 2 of the G1 Climax, we were at 2,545 as opposed to the 4,177. These are all in the same arena, just to make sure we're being clear here. We're all talking about the Adion Arena. So 4,177 in the building. So, that's pretty good. Earlier this year, there was a random night of the Best of Super Junior tournament that had 895 people. So, not tremendous, not tremendous, not bad, but look, you can do some comparisons here. Sunny Voyage from Pro Wrestling Noah, which happened just like a couple of days ago, right? That was main evented by Manabu Soya versus Go Shiosaki. What's wrong with me? 614 people showed up for that. TJPW had a show on just the night before the crossover show. 384 people showed up. That's awful. Stardom had a show in October there. 344 people were there. Like, there's a lot of good stuff, that you can glean from this, but I still don't think it's a great number, especially when you consider that last year's historic crossover show, the first one, which happened in November, which was not at the Adion Arena, but nonetheless drew 7,102 fans. So, like, year over year for the same event, we're like 4,000 people difference. That's not good. I don't think anyone's going around the Shin Nihon offices and giving each other some high fives. I really don't. It's that's not great. Those are not. That's right then and there. Like, you can already see like a problem. Now, last year was the novelty of the event, was the first time, and I thought it was much better promoted than this. They did a good job, I find, overall, to give these matches stories. They had Clark Connors showing up on Stardom, and they were doing social media stuff. Like, I feel overall they did a pretty good job building it, but not as good as the first one. And the first one, like I said, had the novelty of it all. But is this an indication of the continuing issues with New Japan's overall star power, where the usual guys, I'm getting really sick of this argument because I really, really sound like a broken record, and it's really fucking annoying. The top stars of the company, being Tanahashi and Naito, both not being physically capable to carry main events anymore, still being named, still being popular, but just not being able to work at the level they once used to. Their absence, along with, again, Kazuchika Okada being gone, and, Will Ospreay being gone. Have we, is New Japan really suffering from all this time, just not building new guys and putting too much weight on the shoulders of, a lot of people like to call it the golden era, right, of New Japan. And most of them are not gone, are gone or can't do it anymore. We're reconstructing the Shota Uminos, the Yota Tsuji, so on and so forth, the Oiwas. And it's going to take a little time. So is this just an indication that Is this an indication that Zack Sabre Jr. might not be a considerable draw? Maybe. Maybe we're just not ready to have that discussion quite yet. Because I think the Tokyo Dome is going to be very much a determining factor here as in regards to whether Zack can draw or not. But as it stands now, New Japan is not in the best spot ever. It's not in a dire spot. There are other companies in Japan that are suffering much, much more than they are. But I think we need to give this a little breathing room. But, the one thing we can absolutely say is that Zack Sabre Jr. is not the instant potion of healing to New Japan's woes, attendance-wise. Where should we start? Why don't we go? Do we go to the top? Do we go to the tippy top? I think that's a good way to do it. I like doing that. I like going to starting from the top of the card and working our way back down. Feels like it gives me, I enjoy the energy more. Maybe before I get into the matches themselves. Talk about the show, right? This is not a show that is everyone's cup of tea, but I don't have a problem with intergender wrestling, and I know a lot of people do, but I don't, and I think there's ways of doing it right, and I think for the most part, New Japan did it right. I have some quibbles, but I think for the most part, they did it right. Where there's, where the girls are so petite sometimes that the guys cannot credibly look like they're taking offense. And that's been put across on a couple of occasions, right? Like Suzu Suzuki, despite the fact of her being considered a maniac, a bruiser, she had issues trying to get at Great O'Khan, right? Which is normal because Great O'Khan towers over everyone and he's an animal. So, that's a smart way to approach it. So it's not like one of these situations where you have an intergender match and there's such a disparity in size between the two, yet both wrestlers are wrestling like they're on the same physical level. And I'm not saying doing moves. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about like physicality, bruising, like strikes and chops and kicks and lifting. They did it in very smart ways. Now, there are things that there are ways that they approached it that I wasn't really a fan of, because I think sometimes they put too much emphasis in a lot of the matches where it's like the woman chops the guy and the guy just stands there and no sells. They did that multiple times over multiple matches. And at some point I'm like, you know what? I fucking get it. I'm not a fucking dummy. Why are you telling me this story over and over again? And can't you tell another story than this, right? Because we get it. And these are all stories that happened at the first crossover historic crossover event last year, where it was like, that's still the same thing. So I'm kind of like, okay, New Japan, you want to shake them and they're like, okay, yes, you've told us all these stories before. Now, can we move on a bit? Can we transition into another telling of the story instead of, well, the girls are smaller than the guys, so the girls can't hit as hard? Like, can't we move past that? But we didn't quite do that. Now, I can understand why New Japan does this, because they are not a company that features intergender matches, period, throughout the year, right? Except for this show, apparently, which seems to be some kind of a tradition. But they seem to be They seem to be angling to do this every year. But if every year we have to reset the stories to be like, hey, remember, the girls are small, the guys are big, and it's like, okay, well, then it gets a little, it's a little tedious. And I already thought this year it was a little tedious. It's like, yes, okay, I get it. Let's do something fun instead. So that to me is a quibble. And the show I thought it was fine, entertaining. I think the business end was pretty good. I think there's, I think the last two matches were notable. I thought they were a lot of fun. I thought the IWGP Women's Title match was a blast, easily the best match on the card. But everything else was all right. It was fine and nothing groundbreaking. And if certain things annoy you, well, about intergender wrestling, well, they were definitely there. And I think New Japan could have just grown up regarding a couple of things. They could have, when we get there, you'll know what I mean when I talk about it. But like overall, I thought, I thought it was a pretty good show. I enjoyed myself. Is it match of the year? Is it a show of the year? No. It's one of New Japan's best shows. No. Far from it. The undercard takes a little while to really kick off, but let's get to it. Why don't we just stop talking about it? No, these are the CMLL notes. This is not, these are other notes. Here we go. Zack Sabre Jr. and Micah defeated the duo of El Desperado and Starlight Kid. Now, Despe and Starlight Kid are absolutely the stars of these crossover shows. And I don't want to hear anything else. The absolute fucking charisma that these two have together and the chemistry that they naturally have is bonkers. I thought I was going to be a little disappointed as opposed to last year, because last year SLK was still a heel and El Desperado was still he was still a scumbag. He was tweening, not an outright Suzuki-gun son of a bitch, but it was still a scumbag. Now, Despe's not as much as a scumbag. He still has scumbag, tendencies. And SLK's she's a baby face now. I was like, I really liked the duo because they were the lovable scumbags. That was the thing. It's like, they clearly liked each other, putting over the brother-sister relationship, big bro, little sis kind of thing. But again, they come together, they do the thing. They just their entrance. And you're like, these two fucking rule. Like, they should be a permanent thing. Like, what are we doing not having SLK and Despe be partners more often, or just be in a fucking stable? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Bring her over more often for New Japan shows. Let her corner him, right? They stole the show from everyone else on this card. No one shined as brightly as these two. Just incredible nutso presence. And I don't know what it is, but it's just that the combination of these two together just lights both of them up, and it is remarkable. So this adds a lot to the match, and they have chemistry in the ring on top of that. So it's like, so it adds a lot to the match, which I thought was a blast. I thought this was a lot of fun. I thought it was a good match. And there's here, okay, and here's another quibble, okay? I don't know why we insist on having the mixed tag team rules on these New Japan shows, because I remember this was something that happened last year, and they're doing it again this year. I I don't know why we're bothering doing the mixed tag rules when the girls are working over the men and the men are working over the women. Like I don't know what the I don't know why we do the mixed tag. Is it just to calm everyone down and say no, these are not really intergender matches. These are mixed tag. And if they start mixing it up, if they actually do some intergender, well, referee's discretion, right? You'd hear that often. You'd hear Chris Charlton and Walker Stewart go, referee's discretion, right? They do that quite often. I'm like, okay, but just then let everyone fight each other then. Like, what's the use other than maybe to try and quell some perhaps some more conservative voices, people who don't exactly like intergender. Like I don't know what the strategy is. That's probably it, but I don't know exactly what the strategy is. So it happens quite a bit in this match, and it's fine. You know what? It's just why bother with mixed rules? It's like it's fine. Micah does a stalling superplex on SLK and follows it up with 4 suplexes, which is fantastic stuff. Micah has come such a long way. Like her look has completely changed. I know she's a big deal in Stardom. I even liked her. She was in a tag team with Hiroki Goto last year, which was one of these star attractions, right? The duo of Micah and Goto, like both the giving off the samurai vibe, and I thought that was a great pairing, and she's tremendous, and she's still tremendous here. The idea of her having won the Cinderella tournament, Zack Sabre Jr. having won the G1, so they're paired together against the lovable scumbags. But the lovable scumbags can't push it off. Michinoku Drivers or Zack Drivers get the big win here for Micah and Zack Sabre Jr. I would give this 3.5 stars, and it's a fun one, like a good, fun, entertaining main event. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing bad to say about it. It was a good time. Mayu Iwatani retained the IWGP Women's title by defeating longtime rival Momo Watanabe. I thought that was fantastic. I thought this was a fantastic match. I didn't quite know what to expect out of this one, but look, these are just a couple of pros, man, a couple of vets. Been a while doing this, both of them, and pulling out the main event stunts, just to make it feel big, make it feel impactful. It's a very, very, very physical match from the get-go. And they trade moves on the apron. I believe Momo does a bastard driver, and Mayu with a dragon suplex as well. Of course, there's the Hate girls who are here as well. Hate being the faction, the House of Torture of Stardom, and they get involved. But there's also the Stars girls from Mayu's faction who are there to cut them off or whatever. And then at some point, Momo has the bat. She has a bat, and she comes to swing the bat, but she doesn't use it. She doesn't use it because she wants to be able to beat Mayu for real without having to cheat, without having to do desperate things to get the win. So she tosses the bat away, and she just starts throwing bombs at Mayu, and just everything but the kitchen sink ultimately. But Iwatani won't go down. She fights back. They keep dropping each other, and they have a very compelling final stretch. Momo unfortunately loses the match. I didn't note the finish, which is weird. I didn't write down the finish, which is strange. But Momo did not make it. Mayu retains. I gave this match 4 stars. I'm going to give it a 4. I thought that was very, very good and clearly, easily the best match on the show. And it's tremendous. Got no complaints. Was it a tiger suplex? I think you're right. Honestly, I'm sorry. For some reason I didn't write down the finish. I just, I basically write down that they keep dropping each other and have a very compelling last stretch. So after the match, Mayu Iwatani, she books herself for Wrestle Kingdom 19, where she's basically saying, I had to sit out last year. That pissed me off. Okay. All right. I can get behind that kind of shit. I don't know how much of stuff she's airing right now. And she says, yeah, I'm going to fight in the Dome this year. And y'all are not going to be able to do a thing about it. And then Izumi walks in to answer the challenge. So that's what we're getting at Wrestle Kingdom. It was made official because President Okada was there. And he was signaling, yep, we're going to do it. Yes. So is he an on-screen character now? Just like his boy, Tony Khan? Anyway. What is it? So Azumi and Mayu Iwatani for the IWGP Women's title at Wrestle Kingdom 19. Dope. That should be a lot of fun. That should be a blast. I love Izumi. I think Izumi has tremendous potential to get herself over in North America because I think she's very charismatic, but a hell of a worker. And, we've seen her a couple of times, like on Strong shows. She did the Forbidden Door. She was in the pre-show. But if you were to give her a little more room and, Tony wanted to, just put her in a match against, basically anyone on the roster, just have her lose, it's one of his top girls, one of the top women in AEW, and have her lose to that person. I think, and that's right. She did Ring of Honor. I think she'd have real potential to get herself over. Taichi and Natsupoi took on Clark Connors and Tekla, and not only took them on, but they also won. So the story here is that well, first and foremost, in case you didn't know, Clark Connors and Tekla are a thing. They're an item. They are dating, and Tekla is a part of Hate. So the Hate girls are there cornering Tekla, and they attack before the bell. But then the Cosmic Angels girls, which is Natsupoi's faction, they step in as well. This goes to the floor for a while, because after all, it is a War Dogs match. And what I find pretty dope here, and I'm not going to lie, is that I enjoy these little things. Tekla has a cast. Like, I'm assuming that it's a legitimate injury. She has a cast, and commentary is putting over the fact that she has that she probably has a foreign object in the cast, right? That she probably has something in there as well to just get, just like old cowboy Bob Orton back in the day. It's like, oh, he's got something in the cast. Can't be just the cast. And he's like, well, you make the cast. When you go to the doctors, he's like, hang on, let's put a metal rod in here, a pipe, and do the cast around the pipe, right? I enjoyed that. Like, it's the kind of and then it's like she's using it as a weapon, while the ref's back is turned and she's whomp, sometimes you just can't beat the classics because the classics are so good. They're just so efficient, Yeah, this was pretty good. She uses it a lot, and this, the match for the majority of it is built around preventing Taichi from getting the tag. But when he does, like, the match just goes just goes on tremendously from there on. And they win. Taichi and Natsupoi good little match. I gave this another 3.5 stars. I thought that this was a lot of fun. And Clark Connors seemed super motivated. I think he had a blast wrestling with his girlfriend. Like it really, really was a good time. We also found out that we are indeed back to calling them just 4 guys. So Taka Michinoku can open back up his warehouse full of just 4 guys merch and start pushing that again. He must. Oh, we're back to just 4 guys instead of just disbanding the whole fucking thing. All right, that's fine. And you know, I forgot to mention, I talked about commentary. I mentioned commentary a couple of times, and it was quite a big table, right? There was like 4 people on it, and I don't remember. Like, of course, Walker Stewart and Chris Charlton were there. We're talking for the English commentary, of course. They were on the table. And then they had Tom, the Stardom guy. And then they had Xena, who was there. Xena, right? They had those, you know. And I thought there were too many people there. And I felt like the Stardom guy and the Xenia, they were completely throwing Walker Stewart and Chris Charlton off their rhythm, like completely. I thought it was a very sleepy commentary, evening of commentary. It wasn't great. They should have just kept it to 2. They should have just had 2 people there. Maybe, you know, they weren't too confident in letting Walker Stewart like guide through with someone that he's never worked with before. Maybe they feel he's still a little green. I don't know what the deal was, but wasn't exactly the best evening of commentary. Great-O-Khan defeated Suzuki to retain the King of Pro Wrestling Championship. So they're doing their best to pass this off as a death match, and when Suzu comes out, they're really pushing to have her death match credentials be brought forward. You know, she's hardcore, she does all this wacky shit, and she comes out with a styrofoam board, and I'm like, already it's like, oh boy. Which is filled with upright plastic forks. Like, plastic, huh? Okay, well, so this ain't your daddy's death match, I guess. I don't know. and I know she's capable of some really intense stuff, but yeah, I mean, this wasn't it, right? This really wasn't it. And here's the thing. Okay, look, straight off the bat, I didn't hate this match, right? I gave it 2 3/4 stars, which is like, meh, you know, like a little below average, not good, not terrible, not exactly mediocre. Just here's my issue is that I didn't hate it because they were trying really hard to make this the only real intergender match, even though, like we talked about earlier, you know, the mixed tag rules really didn't matter. But this was the only one. This was the only match that was billed as intergender, you know, man versus woman. They really did a solid job building the story here that, you know, Great-O-Khan could outclass her at any given moment, and that it's Suzuki's just wild demeanor and her fearlessness that helped her win the match, right? And I thought it was compelling. But yeah, and you know, there's like, yeah, they're fighting up the ramp, and you know, they're pulling big moves. You know, you've got Great-O-Khan who's butterfly suplexing her on the ramp, and and you know, tremendous stuff. And there's some proper wrestling too, but and then we have the staple gun, and she has the staple gun, and she staples, you know, a sheet of paper to her cheek. That, you know, drives that shocks Great O'Connor. Was like, oh shit, this woman's insane. And then she eventually like staples it at the top of his skull. You can see it at some point. There's like 4 staples there. Tell you what, Great O'Connor's not much of a bleeder. I'll tell you that. You know, there's and then there's the spot where she gets thrown off a ladder, a short ladder, off the ladder through the styrofoam board with the plastic forks, and that's like the big spot that ends the match. And I think this is why I'm so low on it, because I feel like they had the elements to really make something remarkable. Like, on top of it being an intergender match, if they really were game enough to go down the death match route, or at least, you know, have some blood going, I think this would have elevated this match tremendously. Because there's some goofy spots in this where Suzuki fills Great O'Connor's mouth with plastic forks, like just a mouthful, and then she runs. She's got him on the apron, and then she runs all the way to the gate on the floor, and she runs back and then she drop kicks him in the mouth, and he's standing there with a mouthful of forks, and that's a little goofy. I'm like, well, I also understand it's, you know, it's practice, and it's common practice in death matches to have weird stuff happen to suspend your disbelief, but it's usually for something that's pretty fucking brutal. That doesn't come across as brutal, especially because the plastic forks were all like pastel colors. I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is a match I really wanted to like. I really wanted to like more. I liked it, but I think I can't give it 3. I can't cross the threshold, because it should have been more deathmatchy. It should have been more hardcore. Now it's just like a cute little plunder match, when I don't feel like it had started off that way, where we had an underdog story to tell, and where the story clearly was Suzuki using her hardcore ways, or, you know, dirty tricks to get the upper hand. And we didn't quite get that. So, yeah. So it kind of left me flat. I ended up not feeling anything. Like, I don't know. I was a little disappointed. Yeah, 2 3/4 stars for that one. Let's breeze through the others. There's there's one spot though, right? There's one spot here where Great O'Con sticks his thumb up Suzuki's ass. Right? He's got her in a submission, and he does like one of these. He wets his thumb, and he just like drives it up her ass. And I'm like, okay. Like, this is what I meant earlier when I was saying, can we move on from oh, guys are fighting girls, you know, kind of thing. It's like, we're not 13. I don't know. It didn't offend me. You know, I'm not like, what's he doing? Like, this is sexual abuse or whatever the fuck, you know. It's like, oh, you know, it's all performance. It's fine. You know, I was more like, this is kind of dumb. It was more like, this is kind of dumb. The Bullet Club War Dogs duo of Gabe Kidd and Drilla Maloney, alongside Natsuko Tora and Saya Kamitani, defeated Hiroshi Tanahashi, Rizuki Taguchi, Hanan, and Saya Ida. Fine little match. I gave it 3 stars. The one thing that I found particularly weird, the highlight of this match, because I thought it was mostly a comedy match, right? And the idea is, in the build-up, the idea here was that Taguchi sort of has a crush on Saya Kamitani. She sort of leads him on, but also tells him to go fuck himself, right? And at some point, Taguchi is standing face to face with Natsuko Tora, and like she's standing in his way or whatever, and she's a big lady, and he's a skinny junior, and sort of like to counter her, he sticks his hands like right in his pants on his crotch, and what is he doing? Is he like he starts to masturbate? Is that the thing? The girls go straight for him when he does that, but I'm like, what the fuck? I know the stories about the gentlemen who go to Stardom shows. I know the lore, but that was a little strange. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Can we just like the Taguchi Kimatani stuff? I understand, because that was actually part of the build, right? That was a thing where he was crushing on her, and she just she's a heel and whatever. But this didn't even connect with the other stuff, and it was weird. It was weird. It was very strange. That, again, not offended, but I was kind of like, it's not great either. Like that, brother, that makes me a little more uncomfortable. That's maybe something we shouldn't be doing, and I don't care if it's like, oh, but it's more accepted in Japan. I don't know if it is. I'm just saying, whatever argument you want to bring up. I'm like, you still shouldn't do that. You still, even if you're just pretending, even if you're just pretending to yank it, you shouldn't do it. It's weird. It's weird. It's not cool. Yeah, I mean, this was, I gave this 3 stars. Overall, it was all right. And interesting little situation here where Tora she really had it in for Tanahashi. Like, she misted him. And then after the match, she went and like beat up on him some more. And she was like, yeah, I'm coming for him. I'm not done with you. I'm like, wow, all right. And I like her. She's got a good old school AJPW vibe about her. I like her. She's got this big bruiser, this Dump Matsumoto Aja Kong kind of vibe to her, which I dig. I think there's something there. And like, I'm coming for you, Tanahashi. I'm like, all right. Better than, you could go after the other pervert too. That'd be pretty good. Callum Newman, Francesco Akira, and Jeff Cobb defeated Oleg Boltin, I should say. Tiger Mask and Toru Yano. I gave this 2.5 stars. It's fine. Akira gets the win on Tiger Mask. I don't have many notes here. Azumi Mei Sera and Miyu Amasaki defeated the Hate trio of Konami, Rhea, and Ruaka. Azumi gets the win with the missile dropkick after Sarah lands a double underhook X Factor. And again, like Azumi is very, very, very good. And on the Hate side, I like Rina, but Konami and Ruaka, they could hit the bricks. I didn't think they were that great. And finally, we had Saori Anu and Tam Nakano defeating Shiri and Tomoaka Inaba. Good little opener. Tom gets the win with the screwdriver. Nice little hard-hitting opener. Of course, you got Shiri in here. It was queen of striking. She's tremendous. Excited to see how. Yeah, like she's anyway. I like her a lot. She should be more at the top of the card than slumming it with, this curtain jerking here. Oh, we had a pre-show match. Aya Sakura and Hanako defeating Rana Yagami and Saya Kurara. That's fine. Don't have much to add there. So there you go. That is my recap, my review of New Japan Pro Wrestling X Stardom Historic Crossover 2. Business end of the show was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I thought, like I said, Iwatani versus Watanabe was the main event of the show. Well, wasn't the main event, but it was the match of the show. But is it something you need to watch? I don't think so. Especially at $35. Christ, no. Like, it's fine. Like, nothing. Yeah. If you can ever catch it for free, you'll be entertained. But yeah, no, this is not a I don't know why it's a pay-per-view. I really don't. I don't know why this particularly is a pay-per-view. Maybe off of the success of last year, they were like, oh yeah. But it definitely wasn't as much of a success this year, and it definitely wasn't as good as a card, I find, overall. But yeah, maybe just added to the regular New Japan World rotation, and that'll be fine, right? That'll be fine. AEW Full Gear 2024 happening this very weekend, November 23, 2024, from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. Last I checked on WrestleTix, we had broken the 7,000 tickets distributed mark. I think we were around like 7,300, something like that. There's a fair chance they can get to 8K. I think there's a fair chance that we'll get to 8,000 people in that building. I think there's a fairly good positive vibe around the show, and overall, AEW pay-per-views perform well, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. The concern that I have is in regards to buys. I don't know if this is going to be one of these shows that I don't know if this is going to be a show that people are going to be purchasing on pay-per-view, because I kind of think the main event is a little soft. I don't want to say cold. I don't think it's cold, and they have one more week, this Wednesday to really bring it home, to have one final big angle, because we're going on Saturday. There's no collision, right? But as it stands right now, like I talked about it on the Dynamite review last week. Orange Cassidy is he really should he have been the first guy? And I think everyone is sort of pointing at Darby, and everyone's getting excited what Darby's doing. And they're setting up Darby to be probably the next contender of the month for Moxley. And Darby is, not even involved in this match and already feels more exciting. He feels like a more promising prospect of a match, or at least on the build, right? Because here's, the secret sauce here is that Orange Cassidy's a great wrestler, and he's going to do fine with Mox. And they've already wrestled before, and they've had some dope as hell matches. It's going to be fine. What I'm talking about is the build. I'm not talking about necessarily the quality of the match, but the build in and about itself, not the most blazing hot experience that we're that is driving us into this show this weekend. So again, not necessarily a knock on the potential quality of the match, but potentially just could end up being just potentially could end up not having great business returns. That's the vibe I'm feeling right now. Again, I could be wrong, but let's take a look at the card. Let's break things down. Chad, of course, you're more than invited to get involved in this. Jon Moxley versus Orange Cassidy in the main event for the AEW World Championship. I mean, what else can I add to what I just said? I think that as the top angle in the company, I feel like the Moxley stuff started off really, really strong, but it started floundering a little bit. Last week, I think, was a bit of a miss until they started brawling again, and Darby Allin got swung into a bay, into a loading dock door, right? The match has potential to be good. That, I think the ceiling on it is good, and if these guys want to turn it up and they want to really over deliver, we can go for it too. I think we can probably expect some type of interference from the Death Riders, and also then by association, the conglomeration will also get their nose wet in this one as well. But yeah, it's like it's an interesting main event. I'm looking forward to the match, but it doesn't feel like the hottest thing in the company. In fact, I kind of look up and down the card and I think there's one match that really feels hot. We'll get to that. The others are fine, or, again, I kind of shrug at them, but I think there's really only one match that is really, really hot. Maybe two. We could potentially say two. Maybe two, but it ain't the main event. I don't think the main event is that hot. And I think the fact that we've all kind of accepted that Orange Cassidy, like even if it's subconsciously, implicitly, I think the fact that we've already accepted that Orange Cassidy is not defeating Jon Moxley here, I think that's also adding to the kind of situation with the match, but these are two workers that I really, really, really like. It's been a theme on the Dynamite reviews, which you should watch, by the way, if you don't, every Thursday. It's a theme that we have oftentimes there where it's like where we talk about Orange Cassidy and how they were very, very, very close to elevating him, and they just decided not to. And it's not that they didn't have it. It's not that they hadn't created the moment. When he came out of his feud with Jon Moxley, after losing to him, everyone was saying to themselves, everyone was saying Orange Cassidy has lost upwards. He lost the match, but he's going to be elevated. He just had, a tremendous year of defenses with the international title, or the Pan Am title. What was it called? The All Atlantic title. And we were, he was pushing it so hard, and it was such a legitimately great title run in modern wrestling, just phenomenal. Week after week, show after show, defense, and some great defenses within it. So you're like, this felt like a shoo-in to sort of push Orange Cassidy into that other level and be a top guy. But then no, he loses, and then next thing you know, you have him show up back up on TV, and he's eating Doritos with Hook, and you're like, okay, back to the mid card with you. So what was the point, right? If Cassidy had that big time aura about him that they were on the cusp of having with him back then, I think we'd be having another story here today. We'd be maybe arguing a little more, but like, there's no way Moxley's losing this, right? There's no way in hell. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. See, this is the match. You know what I was saying just a minute ago, where I was saying, oh, there's one match that feels hot, maybe two. This is the one where I'm like, maybe two. I think the build to this was solid. I think it's a good. I think the build was good. It makes a lot of sense. It's been front and center. I think it was very well done. I think they're building Kyle Fletcher tremendously to really be the star that he is destined to be, and have been doing tremendous work keeping Will Ospreay off of television for weeks, while Fletcher just like went around talking shit, being a little snot-nosed brat, and that tremendous promo that he cut where he shaved his head. That's all stuff that I love. And then they did that great promo last week, that face-to-face confrontation. I mean, there's a lot to love here. Is it super hot? No, I don't think it's super hot, but you know what? It is hot. Okay. I think it's a hot match. I think there's something here. They've been working at it, and it's going to have a lot of heat. There's a lot of hate in this feud. There's a lot of heat to it. I think it's going to be, it's going to go, and like you look at the rest of the card, and this is going to be the match of the night. Like, and honestly, it sucks to say for these two dudes, but that's the floor, right? That's the floor for Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. It's match of the night. That's their floor. I have, like, this is the work rate special. This is the one to get the fans excited, to get the sickos popping, right? This is the one. I'm looking forward to it. Like, this is one of two matches that I'm really, really excited to see. So yeah, I'm going to retcon a little bit what I said. It's a hot match. We've got two hot matches on the card, and this is one of them here. You know what? Here's the thing. This is what I'm feeling. This is what's, bubbling in my tummy right now. I think Kyle Fletcher's winning. I think Will Ospreay's putting him over. And that's the right thing to do. And, there'll probably be Don Callis shenanigans. That annoys me. But I really think Kyle Fletcher's going over. I really do. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do. And it's going to be a tremendous match. I mean, and if anything, I think this is much better built than Moxley versus Cassidy. This is much better built. Jack Perry will be defending the AEW TNT Championship against Jack Perry. Wait, what did I just say? Jack Perry is going to be Jack Perry's going to be defending the AEW TNT champion against Daniel Garcia. You can't defend it against yourself, you big silly. Yeah, I mean, this should be hotter, but it's not. They should be going harder with Garcia, but they're not. But I'm still not, I'm not going to sit here and say, Daniel Garcia fumbled or whatever. No, I kind of think that this is a match that's going to happen. This is why we were talking about it on stream, right? About how the titles feel, the prestige of the titles feel in AEW, right? And we were putting them together, and we were saying, well, at least I wasn't. I was saying, like, the top title, of course, AEW World Heavyweight Championship for the men's, right? We're just talking about men's titles here. The world title for the guys, and then I'd say the international title, the Continental Crown, and the TNT title. Like, the TNT title feels like the most forgettable thing on the show, and has been for a little while at this point. And I don't think it's necessarily a Jack Perry problem. I think it's a booking problem where they haven't been really featuring Jack Perry in anything really specific or interesting. And I think there's also a principal issue that you have as well with Perry's booking is, like, you kind of feel like the elite are falling apart or have fallen apart, and AEW doesn't want to address that yet. But, like, Perry, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the night, Jack Perry ends up working for Mox and group, right? Because he has that attitude about him you remember John Moxley when he came back that one time, he crossed paths with Perry and he says, "I always liked you, kid." And everyone thought it was a CM Punk reference, which it might have been, but it could also be something that they use to give some fire here. Like, Perry is needing something, and he needs physical things to do. I don't think, the bus is whatever the fuck. And, he's not a guy who thrives with shit in periphery. I think he's a guy who can get himself over if he's doing physical things, if he's doing nasty shit. You know, it's like, you know, I kind of think that this is where we're at with him. And I think that his reign has not been good. I don't think it's been interesting. And, you know, it kind of feels wasteful to have Daniel Garcia be doing this, although I understand why they're doing it. Now, like we were saying, again, earlier on, on a previous stream, I think Daniel Garcia's spot this year is in the Continental Classic. And I would go as far as to say that he should, like, a compelling bit of booking is Daniel Garcia coming in the Continental Classic this year and using the story of last year's disastrous C2, right? Where, you know, he was at the bottom of his block. He won only one match. It was not a good run for him. And the story last year, which worked for the story last year because, you know, the Jericho Appreciation Society had just broken up and he was, well, had broken up and he had been soul searching. He's been trying to find an identity. Now you kind of feel like we have an opportunity to bring that story to a full circle moment where he's like, I am a wrestler. I'm not a sports entertainer. I know who I am. I found my identity, and thus comes into the C2 and starts kicking ass and goes to the finals and beats Kazuchika Okada for the Continental Crown. That is the best and most compelling piece of booking you can do with Daniel Garcia. Forget about the TNT title. Do the C2. Have him win the Continental Crown. That's the most compelling bit, especially against Kazuchika Okada. Like, you've got a true to form underdog story, a guy that everyone will believe. Everyone will be rooting for Dan Garcia in this tournament if this is the plan that they decide to go for. Like, the heat on this one, on that final, will be tremendous. The issue, so there's no issue. So, like I said yesterday, I'm also saying it here because I want as many people to take me to task if this doesn't work. But I'm predicting, I'm going full on here. If Daniel Garcia loses the TNT Championship, loses the TNT Championship match at Full Gear, and is included in the Continental Classic, Daniel Garcia is winning the Continental Classic. If he wins the title, then I'm not so sure. If he wins the TNT title, then I'm like, this is all falling apart. But I can feel it in my bones. Somehow, I think I'm feeling it. I think it'd be a good move. I think Garcia is ripe for this. Who gives a fuck about the TNT title? Like, honestly, we don't give a fuck. The Continental Classic, that would be tremendous if they decide to go down that route. And we'll find out soon because Tony Khan said that they were going to announce the field for the C2 after Full Gear. Is it immediately after or the next day or on Monday or what? You know, after could mean a lot of things. So listen, I think Jack Perry retains because you have to boost Daniel Garcia. You have to do something with him. And I don't think strapping the TNT title on him is the way to do it. Swerve Strickland versus Bobby Lashley is also on this show. That is my original This Match is Hot match. What a fantastic build they had going here. What a fantastic build that they put together for Swerve and Lashley. And to think that they were ready to blow this at the Wrestle Dream, right? But something didn't quite work out with Lashley and they had to postpone everything. And the postponing was probably the best plan here because we were able to take our time. We were able to give Shelton Benjamin some shine, which was important. And then Swerve came in and defeated the guy, which only led naturally to Bobby Lashley coming in to stick up for his guy. Like, he was always the end boss, right? But you never saw him. He wasn't quite there. Shelton got his moments, but now Lashley's in and he's kicking ass. Swerve posted an X-ray of him I couldn't of his bones, you know, essentially of him, but of his bones, of his skeleton. Basically saying, oh, the Hurt Business beatdowns take a toll or whatever, right? So they're establishing that he's going into this match hurt, which is why Bobby Lashley is going to win this match. That's where we're going with this, right? And I mean, they should. This is how they're doing it. And look, I'm going to tell you, this is going to be the final signal here for me to whether or not I was completely and utterly wrong about the Hurt Business coming into AEW, or if I was 100% correct. Because MVP has been an absolute delight. He's been fantastic in his role. Bobby Lashley in AEW comes off as twice the superstar that he was at the other place. Like, no one even comes close. Like, he's got it, right? So of course you're gonna have him win his debut, and he's probably gonna beat the piss out of Swerve. Now I'm excited to see what kind of what kind of work he puts in, Lashley, before absolutely like throwing my opinion under the bus and saying, well, I was completely wrong, folks. We'll see how it goes, but I'm excited for this match. Bobby Lashley's gonna win. But I'm stoked. I'm really excited to see it. And another fantastic feather in Swerve's cap. This is great post title booking for Swerve, right? Swerve he's dropped the title. He's not the champion anymore. He's not sniffing it right now, but he's kept in these really big important angles. So he continues to feel important, and that's significant. When are we getting the Lashley Caster reunion? No. I'm telling you, if anyone is joining the Hurt Business, it's Anthony Bowens, who stole the card from Max Caster and gave them a call. Because I find it very interesting. I found it interesting that, was it last week or the week before, on Dynamite, MVP sort of ran down the number of people he gave cards to. He sort of, he gave them to Ricochet, to Max Caster. And why would he do that if only to not underscore that these people have cards, which will end up being a better Swerve to have Anthony Bowens be the guy who's like, no, I'm done. And Anthony Bowens should actually be done with this clown, right? And he's campaigning for the C2 on Blue Sky. He's campaigning to be in the C2. So, you know, you never know how this is going to go. Lashley's going to start working like Karl Gotch. Look, my expectations are reasonable. It's like not suddenly going to be, oh, thank God, Bobby. It's okay if Bryan Danielson is gone. We have Bobby Lashley now. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. My expectations are what they are, but you know, I'm excited to see if he's going to do like an Adam Copeland and adapt himself to the AEW style, or if he's gonna, you know, hang on to the WWE way of doing things, right? What's next? Oh, Mercedes Moné will be defending the AEW TBS Championship versus Chris Statlander. I think the build to this is absolutely the pits. I think it's terrible. I think the build to this match has been awful. I have hated most of the segments that they've done for this build. If they want to get me excited, they've got one Wednesday left, and they better pull magic out of their ass, because I thought this build stunk. You know, and all the way to the start with Chris Statlander just turning back babyface after doing the heel thing, which was so incredibly fresh and felt like, oh, this is exactly what she needed to refresh herself. And I was excited for an extended heel run to then, you know, get the babyface back, but then the babyface, they just turn her on a dime because they need an opponent for Mercedes. I'm like, this is all dumb. Like, this is all kind of dumb. It really is all kind of dumb. and I'm not into it. And I thought the build has been terrible. And yeah. However, we get to this match here, and these are two very good pro wrestlers that I'm excited to see what they'll be able to do together. But like, I'm not excited about the match. I'll watch it, and I'm sure I'm going to end up enjoying it, but I'm not particularly invested in it. And that's part of what wrestling is, right? You have to be invested in these reasons sometimes for this to happen. I think Statlander doesn't win. I think she loses. I think this feud must continue, trademark. They'll probably end with Camille shenanigans, with Camille doing something to restore her Mercedes' faith in her, right? Because she's been in the doghouse doing, not living up to expectations. So Camille is going to do something to redeem herself. She's gonna do something to help Mercedes win, and Mercedes is going to be like, we're good now. That's how it's going to go. So Mercedes retains. Private Party are going to be defending the AEW World Tag Team Championship against the Outrunners, the Kings of the Black Throne, and the Acclaimed. Oh, I am so sick of the Acclaimed. I am so done with the Acclaimed. I really hope they break them up. And just do it on the show. Like, rip off the Band-Aid. We're done. It's fine. Come back to it down the line. Just, push Anthony Bowens. Fuck Max Caster. Like, anyway. Again, like, okay, these 4 ways are what they are for championship matches. I'm never a fan. You guys and gals and non-binary pals already know this, so it's I'm already not invested in it. I am also of the opinion that the Outrunners shouldn't win, and the Outrunners shouldn't win. You got to be careful. You got to be careful with the Outrunners, because what's going to happen is they're going to be another Acclaimed, where people are just going to get if you push them too much and you give them too much time, people are going to get really, really sick of them. And see, people right now think they want more of the Outrunners, but they want the same amount of Outrunners that they have, so that they always feel fresh and new and stupid and great, instead of becoming a push commodity. And then you see them every week, and then they have, these long ass segments. And then you're like, okay, well, the joke's not funny anymore. Cause this is a joke that really has the potential, the 80s gimmick. It really has the potential to run its course real fast, to get real old real quickly. I'm telling you guys and gals and non-binary pals, right? So, I'm just, all I'm saying is that I know a lot, everyone are want more of the Outrunners because, it's a good bit. It's a good act. But sometimes, the adage where you have to leave the audience wanting more. I think less is more when it comes to the Outrunners. So I hope they don't win. And here's the thing. I like the Outrunners. I think they're fun. But I don't want them all over my TV every week. That's the thing. But they're a good little act. So I don't think anyone is winning here outside of Private Party. Private Party's retaining these titles. Glad to see Malachi Black and Brody King at it. That's tremendous. The Acclaimed is what it is. We'll see how this match goes. Private Party is it is what it is. Jay White versus Hangman Adam Page. You know what I was expecting out of this match? I was expecting a stipulation. I thought they were going to do some kind of gimmick where it was submission work, right? Because the idea here is that Hangman's leg is hurting, and Jay White is going to go after it. So I was thinking they were going to do some kind of some kind of submission, but it looks like it's going to be a one. Look, there's still time to change, right? I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 19th. We haven't seen the Dynamite yet, so there's still time to add stipulations and whatnot. But for the time being, it's still a straight up singles match. Look, if they want to do a feud where it's just straight up singles matches, I'm cool with that too. Everyone, not myself included, not just myself, but everyone loved their match at Wrestle Dream. There's no reason why they wouldn't be able to continue down that road here. The Hangman cannot have a bad match. I think that's universal truth at this point. The Hangman cannot have a bad match. And Jay White is a tremendous pro wrestler who has proven that somehow he can, the most dastardly heel for years, in Japan, somehow can acclimate to being a babyface, like in the snap of your fingers. So it's like, I'm confident that that this is going to be another barn burner. I'm excited. Like, this is going to be really, really great. And I think Hangman gets his win. MJF versus Roderick Strong. Listen, I think Adam Cole. Okay, bold move by AEW to knock Adam Cole out of this match and create the story, I guess, that I kind of wanted to see. You remember when we were talking about this on the Dynamite review, where I was like, Adam Cole should not, when they decided to do the you have to win 3 matches and then maybe you'll fight me at Full Gear kind of thing. Adam Cole should have lost his match with Malachi Black, right? What was the one before? I'm drawing a blank. He wrestled Malachi Black. He wrestled Konosuke Takeshita. Why am I drawing a blank? Buddy. That's right. No, that's right. He should have lost to Buddy. He should have lost to Buddy Matthews, and then go on a downward spiral where he has no more faith in himself, and tries to win and can't. Like he's absolutely like he's lost all confidence, right? He can't pick himself back up. But then eventually, whatever the fuck happens is, Kyle O'Reilly comes back and pats him on the back or whatever, whatever the fuck. And then eventually he builds his confidence up, and then you build a match with Max for one of your big shows, for the Australia show, for, the Texas show, whatever the fuck. I just wouldn't have had him won those 2 first matches. I would have, like, straight out the gate, that's what I would have done. And then have Adam Cole, like, suffer his way back kind of thing. Truly rebuild himself, because that's what in the eyes of a lot of fans, he has a lot of rebuilding to do. Bold of AEW nonetheless to sort of have him lose, and then he's out of the three-way match with Max, and it's like, god damn, okay, interesting little wrinkle. We'll see what they do with that. But I mean, outside of that, like, I think it's all been kind of cold. I don't think it's been particularly exciting. I don't think it's been all that exciting, the build. And actually it hasn't done much for me. And, Adam Cole had a great match against Konosuke Takeshita, but then again, Konosuke Takeshita could take me to a 3-star match, Like, it's Konosuke Takeshita. He's one of the best wrestlers on earth. So, of course, you're going to have a good match with him, right? And I understand, he's been injured. He's got to find his footing, so on and so forth. I get it. But, the problem with Adam Cole's aura right now is that it's been completely shattered because of the Brochacho stuff, and then the injury, and then coming back and being very so-so. Like, we're not lighting up the sky here with Adam Cole's wrestling, and the angle is very heavy-handed. You can tell that there's a lot of Max involved in this as well. Max versus Roderick Strong, as far as a pro wrestling match goes, sneaky good. Like, I know there's a lot of people who are very, who jump on the criticism of MJF very, very quickly. I don't understand it as quickly as it is. Like, I understand that he does a lot of stuff that a lot of pro wrestling fans don't like, but the fact is that he is the most complete pro wrestler out there that can actually even work. Like, that's the thing that a lot of people seem to forget, is that Max can work. But I think they forget it because he likes to layer on the gimmicks and the angles and the stories so thick, period, that you forget that MJF is a tremendous professional wrestler in every sense of the word. Despite the fact that he, has the occasional flight to Turkey. That being said, I'm looking forward to this match. It might not be a match that I've been excited about. I kind of think the build was, is kind of bad. Maybe Max will show up on TV this week, maybe give it a little shot in the arm, but this has the potential to be a lot of fun. But of course, Max is going over, which is also one of the reasons why it's hard to get excited for the match, because the result is kind of phoned in, right? So that's where we're at right now. Oh, and of course, on the pre-show, we have a QT Marshall versus AJ Big Boom AJ. Eric Justice, which we talked about at the start of the stream. And I don't want to revisit that because I'm annoyed. So that's the preview for AEW Full Gear happening this weekend. And if there are any more shows or happenings or events that happen, we are going to, we'll talk about them on the Thursday stream. Just as simple as that. There will absolutely be more matches added. We'll fill in the blanks on Thursday. And that does it. We are done. We're finished. Another week in the bag for the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you very much for tuning in, for listening, for popping us. When I say us, I mean me. I don't know why I go down the, I start talking in third person plural. There's no reason. It's just me. It's always been just me. It'll probably be just me until the end days. But thank you all very much. I appreciate it a great deal. One last pitch for a like here on YouTube, or for some positive reviews and ratings wherever else you listen to the show. I'll be back Thursday, of course, with the Dynamite review. Some more streams on Thursday as well. We'd love to have you join the YouTube side of things as well. If you're listening to this on your podcast side, you don't have to join the streams, but there's a lot of stuff that gets clipped, stuff that you're missing out on for sure. So we'd love to have you over on that side as well. So in the meantime, until we see each other next time, go watch some Randy Orton and get back to me, and then I'll see you next time.